so many people unknowingly are chasing someone else's version of success and
Yeah.
chasing either society's version of success, or maybe it's the voice of their mum or the voice of their dad or the voice of their peers or the voice of their sibling or the voice of their enemy or whatever it is that's driving them to
Mm.
make certain decisions in their life and career. And you're never going to feel truly fulfilled if you stay in that illusion.
Hello and welcome to the Go Encourage podcast, where I talk to real people about real life, trying to gain some insights from their experiences building courage. Today, I'm joined by Emma Zia, who's a transformational teacher, an entrepreneur, and an intuitive guide. She's coming at us all the way from Australia, so I'm really excited to see what she brings to the table in terms of her insights and her experience around building courage. It's a world I don't know much about. We did know each other years ago as a photographer and a model, and here we are now as two podcasters overlapping and seeing where this conversation goes. So let's get started. Hello, Emma Zia. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm super, super excited.
Yay. And you are coming at me from Australia on the other side of the planet.
Yes, I was going to say sunny Gold Coast, but it's actually really overcast today. So
Oh, is it
we're matching
overcast?
England today.
Okay. Well, we've got a storm coming today. It's a bit windy out here.
Mm,
It's evening time.
mm.
So we're 9 o'clock here, and you are 7:30. Is that right?
Yeah,
7.
7:30. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Well, it seems to be a tradition on this podcast to start off with your name, Emma. What does Emma mean? Do you know?
Yeah, so Emma is actually, I think it comes from Germany, and I'm pretty sure it means universal wholeness,
That's
which
right. Yeah,
is
that's what I thought as
very
well.
on brand.
When I saw that, I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting."
Yeah.
Considering what I know about you.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
actually quite an interesting story because I was originally called Yasmin. So I was
oh, is that
originally
right?
called a different name, and then my mum just really, really felt she was just like, I don't think this little baby girl is a Yasmin. But she was obsessed with Jane Austen, and that she was always watching that movie Emma by Jane Austen. So yeah, she was just really inspired by that. Not so much the character, but the name.
Right. Okay. And so
Yeah,
you were a baby when that happened, when that
yeah,
transition happened.
yeah.
Amazing. So universal and wholeness. So sort of like the whole package in terms of balanced everywhere. Is that right?
Do you know what? That's actually very on point with my personality.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And you're originally from the UK, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm from a place near Brighton in the southeast.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then I moved to Australia. I moved to Melbourne 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago now, actually. And then moved
Wow.
to Gold Coast a couple of years ago. Yeah. So my mum's originally from Australia. She's
Mhm.
originally a Melbourneian. So I had the passport and I was like, let me go see what Australia is about. And like a lot of Brits, I just completely fell in love with the place. So yeah, I don't see myself moving back to England anytime soon, but I certainly miss certain things about the UK. I really miss
Right.
the accent. I definitely miss the banter.
Right. Oh, so is it not as bantery out there?
It's different. It's
Right.
different. Like Australians, like their level of sarcasm is just completely different to England. You know, it's like in England, it's like ripping each other out almost feels a bit of a love language.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas here, like it's actually taken quite seriously. So just little things like that. And I do miss like the change of seasons, which sounds crazy to say that I miss the weather. But because in Gold Coast, it's like hot and sunny, 24/7 all year round, which is incredible. And I love that. But you don't get the contrast of like the autumn,
Mm,
weather and then like going into winter and it's nice and crisp. And yeah, so I miss that a little bit. Oh, and my
okay.
family.
And oh, your family here, are they?
Yes, yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. I've got friends in Melbourne and Sydney as well. And one of my friends in Melbourne, I'm going to shout him out because he listens to every episode. And
Oh,
so Neil, if you're listening today, hello, hello, hello. There you
hi
go. He's
Neil.
such a great encourager. He was actually a mindset coach
Oh yeah.
years and years ago, and that's how I met him. I went to one of his seminars, and then we hit it off and became friends, and we've been lifelong friends since. So,
Oh,
hey
amazing.
Neil. All right, enough about Neil. So childhood dreams often shape our journeys moving forward. So as a young girl, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up? Or did you have an aspiration to go in a particular direction?
Yeah, I love this question. I was asked this recently, and there's one memory that really stands out that I've never forgotten. And I remember I was about 6 years old, and the teacher said, okay, we're going to do an exercise where we decide what we want to be when we're older, and you have to write it down. And I remember writing down teacher. I remember that I always wanted to be a teacher.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because now a lot of what I do is being a transformational teacher and teaching through
Mm.
my workshops, my podcasts, my masterclasses, programs, things like that. So I feel like that has very much become my reality. And I feel like there's probably a part of me that always knew that.
Mm.
But even before I got into this space, I was also a dance teacher.
Oh, okay.
So I've kind of always fallen into these roles where even in when I used to work in employment, I would always be like the manager and I would always be, teaching certain things. So I feel like it's just very much a part of who I am, that teacher
Mm.
archetype. I remember I also wanted to be a vet at one point because I love animals so, so much. But I didn't want to have to put animals down. And I was like, I don't want to deal with the bad side of working with animals. And then I also wanted to be like a pop star. I
Right. Okay. Okay.
think like every girl and boy in the 90s. But yeah, I mean, I can't sing. So that was kind of short lived.
That's going to make it a little bit difficult, right?
A little bit, a little bit. I
A
can
little bit.
rap a little bit.
So
But
in the 90s, what was the pop star that you aspired to be like? Was there someone that you were like, hey, I want to be like?
so this is going to sound so weird. I was massively into Britney. I loved Britney, but I
Okay.
remember saying to my mum specifically that I wanted to be like Gabrielle.
Oh, Gabrielle. Oh, yes. I remember Gabrielle.
Yeah. And it's so weird, actually, like full circle moment. And I've just put the two and two together is that one of Gabrielle's songs is actually a song that me and my partner like. It really represents like the start of our relationship. So we listen to it all the
Ah,
time. Like
what's
it's
the
got a lot of
song?
meaning to it. So now it's like I'm seeing that. I'm like, oh, okay.
Which song is it?
Dreams.
Oh, yeah, great song.
Yeah.
Classic
Yeah.
song. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, and then in terms of being a vet, so my youngest daughter, she loves animals and she wants to be a vet. And
Oh,
then I spoke to someone who's in that arena, and they was like, "If you love animals, don't be a vet. Work in a zoo." I
exactly.
was
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah,
because you get all you get to see you get to see all the horrible stuff and the stuff that'll break your heart and things like
I
that.
know. And honestly, like I'm very sensitive to things like that. Like even
Mm,
I definitely couldn't be like a nurse or work in a hospital and things like that, or like even, working in an old people's home. I think that I really admire people that do that because I'm so sensitive naturally to people's energies, which I'm sure we'll dive into. But I think I
mm,
would just like, I would really struggle, like seeing people in pain so much,
mm.
and whether that's an animal or a human, like I'm quite sensitive to that.
Mm. Isn't that interesting? Because I feel that because if you're overly empathetic as a person, you really feel things quite deeply.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, I don't want to be around that. It's more like, oh my gosh, I really feel the burden of that. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So sorry, go on.
I was just going to say because I'm psychic, I actually one of the ways that I understand what people are going through and what they're feeling is I feel exactly what they're feeling. So when I do my psychic consultations, or even if I'm like walking down the street and I feel someone's energy, I feel all of the emotions that they feel in my body, in my nervous system. So I'm actually like feeling and processing and being with that person with whatever they're going through. So that's
Mm,
almost where that sensitivity piece is like, I have to do a lot of release work. And this even happened at the weekend because I had such a full week of clients. Plus, I was holding a couple of my loved ones through some really big challenges. My nervous system was just like really like overwhelmed with emotion. And on Sunday, I just needed to like release it and let it go. And it wasn't mine, it was just other people's. And I asked my partner if he could just like hold me and just kind of like love me in that, because I just need to, when you work in this space, you need to like recalibrate and
Mm.
release very often so that you're not, carrying other people's stuff. So yeah, working in
Mm.
those types of environments would be very extreme for me.
Right, and it's quite a lot like a psychologist, right? A psychologist would
Yeah.
need to get therapy as well,
Mm.
just to kind of, you know, like you say, release some of that
Yeah.
stuff that they're carrying as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And going back to the teacher type stuff, we're going to go into you being a psychic a little bit later on. I'd like
Yeah.
to sort of get a little bit of a deep dive there, but in terms of the teaching, and then that linking to what you're doing now, do you see the little girl in yourself, from those all those years ago, and you've kind of walked the journey?
I love that question so, so much, because yes, I do. And I think this is really the journey that we go on. Is it's almost like, when we're children, we have this essence about us because we have more of an underdeveloped ego and an underdeveloped view of the world. We're just free as our unbounded expression. And then we kind of
Mm.
start to add all of these layers and walls of protection as we try and go through this journey of self-preservation. Who do we need to be to fit in? Who do we need to be accepted? And we create all of these layers. And then when we get
Mm.
to like, our 30s, it just all starts to dismantle. And then this is when we go through awakenings. This is when we're in a relationship, which is very transformative for us. This is when we go through the stage of actually now letting go of the layers to come back to our true essence. And that's been a journey that I've been on for the last like 4 or 5 years, very strongly. And I feel like that essence that I had as a little girl, and that presence and that vibrancy, and the things that I like love to do, and my passions and skills and innate gifts and all of that has just really, really come to the forefront. And it feels so
Mm.
beautiful to just really embrace that. So the answer to that is absolutely.
Yeah, excellent.
Mm.
Oh, you know what? That really makes me think about there's a coach that I saw a while ago, a therapist actually, Merrill, shout out if you're listening. And he was talking about the same sort of thing, but he was talking about cups. So he used the analogy of cups. So you're born, and then this cup is put on top of you. You are this thing, and then you keep adding these cups until your pile of cups are like this high, and then you get to a point where you don't know who you are anymore because
Mm.
you've been programmed to think, support this team, or think in this way politically, or whatever it is, become like what's around you. And then it's the process of removing those cups and
Mm.
getting back down to the essence of who you actually are, which is in
Yeah.
alignment with what you're saying as well. Mm.
Absolutely. And like, this is what is mind blowing when you actually look at it from like, if you zoom out and look at it for what it is, it's so crazy that in those moments where we're cracked open, in those moments
Mm.
where we feel like we are dismantling, or our reality is dismantling in the way that we know it, that is actually the moment that we come home to ourselves. But we are so
Mm.
afraid because we're so far
Mm.
removed from what home feels like. And that is
Mm.
what is so mind blowing to me, that those moments where we're cracked open in vulnerability, and we're invited to look at a certain part of us that we've forgotten or suppressed or pushed down for so long. We're so afraid to do that, even though that
Mm.
is the journey home. Like, that is
Yeah.
the path, because we're just dismantling the layers. It's not us that's cracking open, it's the false
Mm.
version of us, the masks, the
Mm.
layers, the bubble wrap that we've concealed ourselves in. That's what's breaking
Yeah.
apart. And when you
Yeah.
actually like trust and surrender into that process, you return to that unique essence, which is your authentic expression, which to me is freedom.
Mm.
So it's beautiful, but it's just so interesting how paradoxical humanity is, and how humans work, and human behavior, and the universe in general. And it's just fascinating to look at it from that point of view.
Yeah. Paradoxical. Love that word. That's a great way to describe it as well.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, definitely. All right. As a bit of a brain break, what we'll do is we'll get to know you a little bit for the listeners who are tuning in. I'm going to throw some quick fire questions at you just so you can get a little bit of who's
Mm.
Emma? What does she like? All right. You ready?
Yeah, I love quick fires. Let's go.
All right. Here we go. You know what? I fail at these quick fires all the time because there's always follow up questions. Let's see if I can actually ask you
Yeah.
questions without following up. You ready? Favorite cuisine?
Mexican.
Okay, nice. Preferred clothing choice.
I'm either super chill in my active wear or my sweats, or I'm really glam.
So you're one
I
extreme to
oscillate.
another.
I oscillate, yeah.
Um, Favorite place.
Like location,
Yeah, could be anywhere in the world.
wherever my heart is, wherever I am
Wherever.
is perfect and
Oh,
beautiful.
profound, like it. I'm trying not to ask follow-up questions to that because it's a lovely answer. Um, Top season and why?
This is so funny going back to what we said. Like Gold Coast
Yeah.
has like one season and I love the heat. I love humidity. I really thrive in like humid environments, but I do love autumn.
High five me.
Yeah.
It's the best season. It's the best season.
It is. And it's like the energy behind it as well. Like things are starting to fall away, like you're letting go, you're getting ready to hibernate. It's a really beautiful time energetically for release. But also I love like the orange, orange is one of my favorite colors and everything's orange and everything's like you start to wrap up warm and get nice and cozy. And yeah, I love that.
I was podcasting with a lady called Marina Lazarus yesterday, and she said autumn as well. So I've
Yeah.
met two people who like autumn because I find it hard to find people who like autumn. No one really
Yeah.
likes autumn.
I think people
They all
forget about the in between seasons. It's either summer
yes,
or
yes,
winter, but they forget spring and autumn.
definitely. And she said the same thing you said about the letting go and the
Yeah.
sort of message behind that as well, which is
Yeah.
really interesting.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I like that. Oh, quick fire, quick fire. Star sign, if you're into that sort of
Aries.
thing. Aries. Okay, okay. So that's kind of is that March, April? Is that right?
Yeah, March, end of March. Yeah.
End of March, April. Um, where are we? Are you more? Oh gosh, I think I know. I'm going to ask you anyway. Are you more spiritual, religious? Do you believe in a higher power?
Yeah, see, this is an interesting question because so how do I want to answer this?
Quick fire. That's how you want to answer it,
I
and then
know,
we'll unpack
I
it.
know, but I feel like there needs to be context to this because I would
Okay.
say
Okay.
like spiritual or higher power to me it's all one and the same. That's why it's really hard
Mhm,
to like you can't to me you can't compartmentalize. I would say like religion is an extension of the perception of a higher power, so I'm not associated with any religion or tradition, but
mhm,
naturally, when you're spiritual, when you believe in a divine power, naturally that is unity in general. There is no compartmentalization, there is no individual tradition or religion. It just is. So do you know
mhm,
what I mean? So I had to think about
mhm.
that. But yeah, that's my response.
Okay. Okay. So you do believe that there is something more to this existence than what we see in the material world.
Yes, I believe in an intangible reality, absolutely.
Okay. Excellent. Cats, dogs, both, neither.
I would say dogs, but I like big cats, like panthers.
Oh yeah,
I
panther's a
love
cool
the
cat. Yeah.
panther. Yeah.
Great. Great. Um, Last movie you watched, was it a hit or a miss?
I'm not really a movie person, but my partner and I recently went to see, oh my God, what's it called? It was the GameStop movie
Okay.
at the
Don't know.
cinemas. So it's all about the GameStop stock and like how that. So I love like true movies, reality
Right.
documentaries. So it was all about that GameStop phenomena, and it was honestly so good. I would
Was it
highly
good?
recommend.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's so
I'll
good.
check it out. I'll check it out. Have you seen The Big Short with Christian Bale and Steve Carell,
I don't
Ryan
think so.
Gosling? Okay,
No.
that's kind of like stock market type stuff, and it shows what happened when during the recession and how the recession happened. It's a great, great movie.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd probably love that.
Check it out. Current book that you're into at the moment, or a TV show, either or.
Yeah, I don't really read books.
Okay.
I really struggle to read. I'm much more of a writer than I am a reader.
Okay.
So current TV series. We actually just finished watching How to Get Away with Murder.
All right. Podcast over. I'm worried. I'm out. No, I'm kidding. How
This
to
one's
Get
not
Away with Murder.
documentary. But honestly, it's the best series that I've ever seen. I've watched it 3 times now because it's like I
Okay.
love psychological thrillers. And
Mhm.
like the way that they build suspense and anticipation throughout that series is in a way that I've never seen it done before. And I love because I come from a very creative background, I love to see the way that films are directed and pieced together. And I just
Yeah.
think the direction of this movie is just impeccable. It's amazing.
Okay. What was it called? How to Get Away with Murder.
Yes.
I'm gonna clip that little bit of the podcast and put it on Instagram, and then I'm gonna put your name to it, and then you're gonna be investigated. I'm,
No.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, okay. Last phone. It's a bit of a throwaway. Last phone. Last question is a bit of a throwaway question. iPhone or Android? Where do you
iPhone,
sit? iPhone. Yeah. All
all
right.
the
Cool.
way, all the way.
All right. A little bit more about you. Introvert, extrovert. Where would you put yourself in that? And I know these are all labels, and I'm not saying that you have to sit in the label, but I'm kind of
Mhm.
looking along the sort of the graph, the
The reference
spectrum.
point. Yeah. This is really interesting because I would say that I definitely like a lot of alone time and a lot of space with the nature of who I am and what I do. However, I definitely get charged up by my environment. So being in a group of people definitely like gives me that energy. So I would say probably more extrovert than introvert.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
And then love languages. Do you know about the love languages? Ever done that
I do. Yeah.
test? What would you say were your top two?
So this is a really so I find the love languages really interesting, and I'm going to explain why. I almost see love languages the same as I see values. That sometimes the love language that we put at the top is actually the one that we desire to experience the most from the
Hmm.
place of not having experienced it. So
Right.
this is what I find really interesting. And then once you kind of experience that in relationships, sometimes that love language isn't a priority anymore because it just is. It becomes your normality. And this is
Mm-hmm.
something I've realized when people like prioritize their values. Sometimes it is inherent values to like your specific essence and unique, energy. Sometimes you prioritize values based off of your societal conditioning and what your family values. And sometimes what you value is actually something you're seeking to experience, like freedom or love or something like that. So I would say with the love languages, what I've come to realize is that just like everyone, I think we're all of them. And I
Hmm.
think now, because I've done so much work in relationships, my relationships often meet all of those love languages. Like I can't separate it into like a top two because, yeah,
Okay.
it's all there.
I can see you're going to be hard work. All right, here we go. trying to get these answers off you. No, but well put. I
True
think
Aries
I think
style.
there's a lot of truth there. Yeah, true airy style. Yeah, there you go. I'm a
Yeah.
Sagittarian, so I think there's is it Sagittarian, Leo, and Aries? Are they the trio?
We're all
Yeah, there you
fire.
go.
Yeah,
We're all fire signs. Are you more of a make things happen person or a go with the flow person?
both.
You're both. See, I told you you're gonna be
Because
trouble this one.
I
You-
know, but this is the thing. Like, I have to see things. Like, you can ask me one question, and the way my mind works is I'll see like 10 perspectives of that one question based off of the context
sure.
it's placed in. So that's why I kind of like give context to things. But with with making things happen or go with the flow, I think all of us are both because we're in a co-collaboration with an intangible force, divine
Hmm.
power, infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it. And I think some things we trust and we flow with it. And then there's also that point where we take action and we make
Hmm.
decisions. And that is the
Mm.
creation process, is that collaboration.
Yeah, sure. And it takes courage to lean on both of those. You
Mm,
know, courage takes
totally.
action. And then also it takes courage to go with the flow if you're the sort of person who naturally is inclined to, control everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
going with the flow is harder for people typically than taking action.
Everyone loves a good compliment. So what's one compliment that stood out to you and how did it make you feel?
I would say that the first thing that comes to mind is how communication is one of my greatest gifts.
Hmm.
That's what I was told. This was like when I was working for a private business club and we were in a board meeting and we were going around saying what the strengths were that we see in other people. And in this room and on this table with 10 other people, all of them said, Emma, your communication. And the reason that that really stands out to me is because that's the moment I realized that that is my vehicle for initiating transformation in the world, is through my words,
Mm.
whether that's written or whether that's spoken, but it is through my communication. And I think why that means so much as well is I really struggled with communication when I was younger because of severe social
Interesting.
anxiety. So for
Right.
me to be able to use my voice in the way that I do now and to create impact and change from that is just such an example of how our pain gets to be our power.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about that social anxiety?
Yeah. So I come from, I mean, this is like a bit of a story. Do you want me to kind of flesh it out and go into it?
Follow your heart. Go with the flow. Let's see
I
what happens.
yeah, I love that. Trust. So I come from a very spiritual family. So my dad is
Mhm.
a spiritual healer, my granddad is a spiritual healer, my mum is psychic. So I was born into a world that at that time was considered very taboo. No
Mhm.
one was speaking about spirituality in the way that they are today. No one was normalizing meditation in the way that they are today. No one was normalizing psychics in the way that they are today. So for me, I was one person at home and I felt like I could really be myself. And I was so psychically in tune to a point where I didn't really understand the difference between what has happened and what was about to happen because it was so real for me, like the precognition, predicting the future. So could be myself at home and my family could really understand how I was operating, the way I saw the world, like my sensitivity and things like that. But then I would leave the house and go to school and I feel like I would have to be a completely different person. And
Right.
I would walk into school and pick up on everyone's energies. I knew exactly
Mhm.
what was going on for them. I knew what was going on in their home life. I knew what they were processing, what they were going through. And when I started to speak about that, people were like, "What? Like, how do you know that?" And I started to feel this judgment. I started to feel this fear. And so I just started to gradually become invisible because it was actually
Mm.
really hard for me to feel seen because how I wanted to be seen wasn't necessarily accepted by society in that time. The added component of this was I grew up in a family where we did everything alternatively in terms of healing. So we really understood the healing intelligence of the body. And so we would take like natural supplements and herbs and things like that to actually activate the natural innate intelligence that we have rather than, going down the mainstream medical route. Although we did tap into that at times, it wasn't our predominant way of leading our lives. And that was something, again, that my friends didn't really understand. So I just felt very outcasted for a lot of my life.
Mm.
And I just developed really bad social anxiety. So I was really comfortable with people. This is the interesting point. I was really comfortable with people outside of my close proximity. I could be someone that could
Mm.
speak to anyone and everyone. And I was one of those people in school that I was friends with so many different people and I could hang out with so many different people. But in my close group, I had so much fear of people getting close to me. I had so
Mm.
much fear of people really being in my intimate space in case they didn't like who I was. And so I would
Right.
find ways to kind of push that away. And one of the ways I pushed that away was becoming more of a mute. So I really struggled to speak. And I just remember there were so many days where I was sitting at the school, canteen table and I felt like I couldn't speak. And there was so much I wanted to say, but I didn't want to say it in case I looked stupid, in case people didn't like it, in case it wasn't valuable. So I just didn't talk. And so a big transformation for me has been to really activate my voice, to know that my voice matters, to know that
Mm.
I have things of value to say just because I am, just because I exist, and that's all I need to know. And so a lot of what I've been working on is that communication, that expression. So yeah, to be where I am today is just such a 180 moment of really that your greatest gifts in life and part of your purpose, you'll experience the shadow aspect of it, or you'll experience almost, I want to say, like the dark side of it in
Mhm.
order to
Mhm.
fully understand the light side of it. And
I'm with you.
communication and self-expression for me is one of those things.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I
Mm.
think it goes really well with what we were talking about at the beginning in terms of returning to your true essence. Because if you're looking at the shadow side, the dark side, you want to talk about, I don't know, if you talked it a bit more mainstream, the devil twisting your gifting, whatever that was when
Mhm.
you originally got it, that kind of thing.
Mm.
And, sometimes we have to go through that. Um, and I don't know what I feel like in terms of the destiny of that, but whatever that looks like is for a far more intelligent divine force than I can comprehend. But the idea that we go through these journeys to figure out who we are in our essence and actually follow the light and go forth in courage
Mm,
and find who we are. And I think when we live in that fear, we're paralyzed. We're stuck in that limbo state of, you know, I'm not a good I can't communicate very well because I want to hide myself. And looking at your listening to your experience there,
mm,
it's no wonder you'd want to hide yourself. It's no wonder that you'd, that fear of being judged, that fear of not being accepted for who you are. These are big things that people wrestle with all the time,
mm.
don't they?
Oh,
Yeah.
the our need for belonging, because it's one of the psychological human needs. Our need for belonging will drive most decisions that we make in our life. So when
Mm,
people can identify the themes that they have around their sense of belonging, whether that's fear, whether they do feel like they belong, like whatever it is, when you can actually look at that, you can really confront your fear in the face. Because fear is
mm,
obviously very sneaky. A lot of the times when we make decisions about something, we don't realize that we're underlyingly being driven by fear. And
mm,
we think we're so certain in that decision. We're like, yeah, this is the right path for me. This is the right path. But it's just because our ego is trying to keep us safe. And so
mm.
the fear is actually driving those decisions. And what I come to realize is that we really do filter every decision through, am I going to belong? Am I going to fit in? Are people going to accept me? Am I going to be judged? Am I going to be made wrong for this? Like all of those things, like that's the filter that we tend to use. And so when you can get really intimate with what that filter is for you and how you filter those decisions, you can actually break through like massive glass ceilings because you're no
Mm.
longer anchored or bounded by your need for belong. You actually get to be unbounded because you know that you
Yeah.
belong because you are. You have a life here. The fact that you exist means that you fit in, right? You might not feel it on a
Mm.
human level, but it means that you're designed to be here for some reason. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Love it. Some might say that you're uncaged.
Exactly. And that's the whole premise of my brand. Yeah.
That's right. So can you talk about that a little bit, your brand?
Yeah, so I've got the Life Uncaged podcast, which I started, I think, last year.
Hmm.
And again, that was a big thing with the communication, is people kept saying, like, I want to hear you speak like continuously. And I was like, you know what? I really want a space and an avenue to just freely speak. So I started that. And really, the premise of that is all about helping you break out of your cages so you can really return to your authentic expression. And then I launched Uncaged Consulting, which is a psychic consultancy. Sorry, go on.
I'm seeing a Black Panther for some reason breaking out of a cage. You talked about Black Panther earlier on, didn't you?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So that the Black Panther actually came as a symbol to me during a medicine
Mm.
journey. And that's when I
Okay.
really connected with that energy. And a lot of what the Black Panther represents is really like a mirror of who I am. It's really, the Black Panther represents transformation, going into the mystery and going into the darkness and transforming that into light.
Mm.
It's also like the symbol of like sexuality in the animal kingdom. And I've done like a lot
Mhm.
of work on that and studied that because I think that's a key part of transformation and living a full life. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of like mirrors there. Um, but yeah, for me, Uncaged really just allows people to see that there is more that exists than what you can currently see or what you currently believe you're capable of. And
Mm.
it's really about letting go of the cultural conditioning that has created these cultural cages that is keeping you stuck from
Mm.
living
Mm.
your highest potential. And
Mm.
for me, I truly believe that our individual purpose is that each and every one of us has come here to be our fullest expression in whichever way that looks and feels uniquely to us. And so when you hold that as your intention, is I'm just going to be here to exist and discover my fullest expression, that will
Mhm.
actually be the invitation to lean into those moments of fear, to lean into those moments of vulnerability, to lean into those, moments of discomfort, but breaking through. That is that invitation that keeps you leaning in and leaning in and leaning in, because my purpose here is to be my fullest expression. So let me
Yeah.
like cultivate the courage to go and see what that is. Like, let me
Yeah.
meet myself in this lifetime. Let me meet
Mm.
myself in this short lifetime that we have, And what do I need to do to really keep meeting myself in that place to see what I'm truly made of and what I'm capable of? So that's really the essence of Uncaged.
Yeah, love it. And you hear the thing, people say it often, break out of your comfort zone, and it becomes such a cliched thing to say. But if you look at it at that level, that's literally what you're doing when you're becoming uncaged, when you're working on attachment and letting go and things like that. It is, like you beautifully put, it takes courage to do that.
Mm.
And actually, you really are, breaking out your comfort zone, because that's where, the growth is. That's where the transformation occurs. It doesn't happen by staying in the cage, right? You've got to try and pick that lock or try and break through the bars or whatever it is you have to do to get to the next level. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And to add to that point, I think one thing that will help any listener who might be feeling like they're holding themselves back in life is to really rewire your relationship with discomfort.
Hmm.
Because we as humanity, we are so uncomfortable with discomfort that we do
Hmm.
anything we can to avoid it, whether this is direct behavior or indirect behavior. We are always going to be wanting to run away from pain and run towards pleasure. But when you
Yeah.
can really train yourself to actually get comfortable in the discomfort, that's where
Hmm.
courage exists for me. That's where you don't let the fear override you, but you let the fear fuel you. And it's a very
Hmm.
different way of utilizing fear, because fear isn't going anywhere. Fear is always going to be there. And I
Hmm.
think I even wrote a post about this on my Instagram the other day, that there's this illusion that we tend to live in, that people that have accomplished something that we want to accomplish for ourselves must not have fear around it. And
Yes. Yes.
what I've discovered through spending a lot of time with, 7, 8, 9 figure entrepreneurs, and I think as an entrepreneur, you really, you do have to have courage, because you're
You're in the
you're
fire, right? Yeah.
you're risking, every day is a risk for you, right?
Yeah.
And so you're literally always living on your edge, not knowing, not
Mm.
knowing, not knowing, but still leaning in, leaning in, leaning in, creating, creating, creating. So that's really like the entrepreneurial spirit. And I think through spending so many times with so many different entrepreneurs, like the fear is still there. And I think like
Mm.
this is one thing that I'm speaking about quite often at the moment, because I want to break that illusion that, when I have X amount of money, or when I have X amount of clients, or when I have this relationship, when I have this, whatever it is that you feel is going to eliminate the fear, just realize that it's not. Because you're either going
Mm.
to have the same fear, but it's going to feel a bit different, or a new fear is going to be revealed. And the way that
Mm.
I see it is that fear almost acts as our bow and arrow.
Mhm.
So we feel the fear, it's divinely orchestrated that way. I believe that
Mm.
fear is actually a very spiritual experience, because when we feel the fear about something, and the bigger the fear, like the bigger the breakthrough, the bigger the
Mhm.
fear, the bigger the reward on the end of it. And so
Mm.
I see fear as our bow and arrow, which is basically just guiding us to the target, where to go. And we're pulling back and we're pulling back and we're pulling back. And then it's how we choose to relate to fear, which determines if we hit the target or not.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we choose to let fear hold us back, then we're just going to be pulling it back, pulling the arrow back, pulling the arrow back, but we're not going to be doing anything with it. And then we're going to feel that tension of the bow and the arrow. And
Mm.
then we're just going to keep living in that tension of, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, because you're holding the tension. If you just use your fear as your compass to know exactly where you're going, then
Mm.
you let go of the bow and arrow, you hit the target, and you're like, thank you, fear. Thank you for
Yeah.
showing me so intensely what I'm capable of. If I didn't feel the intensity of that fear, I also wouldn't know what was available on the other side of that. So I think
Absolutely.
that is one of the most important things, is that for people to rewire their relationship with fear and also with discomfort.
Mm. I love that analogy. What a beautiful way to put it. With the bow and
Mm,
arrow and that, and everything, the tension, all of it.
mm,
And it kind of speaks to, you find people. I guess I'm one of them who've been through a really difficult time, and then when you're able to get through that, there's this level of gratitude. There's this buzz that you have, and you start to get a fuller flavor of life. It's the same life, right? But actually
mhm,
the flavors that now that you experience, because you've been through that, like you said, spiritual process, it's phenomenal. It's
mm.
transformative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to add to that as well, like similar to you, like when I've been through these massive challenges in my life and I've come out the other side, I experience an internal state of being that cannot even be articulated in the human language. And I'm sure you've experienced that. It's a level of euphoria that is completely
Mm,
unexplainable. And if I
mm,
could just, I almost wish I could find words for it to be like, to say to people, this is what's available for you when you actually move through the fear, when you stop running away from it, when you stop being held back by it, but you use it as your fuel to go and create what you want to create in your life. From a
yeah.
place of deep integrity and authenticity, when you do that, you'll experience this euphoria and this like almost complete shift in who you are and how you see yourself. And that is something that cannot be put into words. It's something that must be
Mm,
experienced.
yeah,
So,
I
really,
100% agree with you.
my role and your role is really to just keep inviting people into that experience because we don't know
Mm,
exactly what it's going to feel like for them, but we do know it's euphoric beyond words.
yes.
And so, really, all we can do is have conversations like this to catalyze something in
Mhm.
someone where they go, okay, this is an invitation for me to go deeper into this, to
Mm,
move through the fear instead of run away from it and to see what's available for me through the other side of this.
yeah, absolutely. And just to dissect what it means to you as an individual, us as individuals, let's say, who've had that experience, who, you know, go through that, there is this, it's hard to put words to, like you said, but there's one, let's say, dynamic of it, which you kind of can't believe you did it. You're like, wow, how did I that actually happened? And then there's this new sense of love for yourself and this new sense of admiration for yourself, which then brings security and trust in future, adventures or future fears, which you go, you know what, I did that, and so I think I can. I think I'm going to go on and smash that one out as well. That kind of thing, regardless of whether you get through it or not. But it's just that, yeah, this is incredible. That no material, no alcohol, no drug, no like relationship, nothing can fulfill that. Like that's you showing up and, destined for greatness, that kind of thing moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing, like speaking more from a biological sense, because this is something I walk clients through all the time, is that the fear that you feel, like you can trace back every fear to the fear of death.
Hmm.
Every fear, because every fear is a primal response in relation to our survival.
Hmm.
So, whatever you really fear is really indicating to you the perceived danger to your survival that you're living in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, our nervous systems are then wired to avoid that fear, right? So when you, and it could be something so small, but when you feel that intense fear, what you really need to do is lean into it, face the fear directly, and then
Mm,
your nervous system will go, oh my goodness, I survived. I just went through that fear and I'm still here alive and breathing. Oh, so it is
mm,
safe to do that thing. And then your
mm.
nervous system is rewired, and then the fear doesn't have a hold over you anymore. So it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
about rewiring your nervous system and leaning into it so that biologically you can feel safe in that thing that you want to do, be, or become.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I what comes to mind to me. So I had really intense anxiety and panic attacks years and years ago, and I remember finding myself going through some stuff and getting through some stuff as well, and it was great. So this is a little bit later on in the journey, and I remember going to Blue Water Shopping Centre, sort of east. I think is it part of London? Is it London, outside London, whatever? But I
Yeah.
went there, and I just had this panic attack. It was really like not fun, and and because I'd experienced them and managed to get through quite a few, I sat there and I just remember just taking sort of 15 minutes, which felt like 2 hours, and just reminding myself of every other one that's come before, and reminding myself, hey, you showed up. You showed up. Like this thing that's going on right now, some of it's irrational, some of it's, well, a lot of it's irrational, but some of it's kind of trauma still trapped in my body, trying to, process through that. And actually, what I'm trying to do is just go to the shops. I mean, it's like whatever it is. I mean, different people have different anxiety, and so for me, that really helped me and my body to say to my mind, "Hey, we've done this before, and we got through it, and it was amazing. So come on now."
Mhm.
Let's step into it, because the other side of this is that you don't step into it, you give up, you go back, and then you look at yourself in the mirror, and then you have all these other emotions, which I don't think you should suppress. I think you should feel your emotions, but you know what that feels like. You've been through that plenty of times, so, and you also know what it feels like on the other side. So you're kind of at this crossroad where you go back to taking action, like courage takes action, let's take a
Mm.
step forward. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think like what you're speaking to there is you're really commanding your subconscious mind. And I think people
Mm,
forget that we have the power to do that, that we have the
mm,
power to command the body and to command the subconscious mind what we desire to experience. So we don't need
yeah.
to let the body override us. We actually get to command the body. And I
Mm,
think when it comes to anxiety and panic attacks, the thing that stood out for me in my own experience with it and also working with other people is in that moment you're feeling that anxiety, you need to return to the present moment because anxiety is
mm,
usually unconsciously a fear of something that hasn't happened yet. It's a
that's right.
fear
Yeah.
of an unknown experience. And so when you can bring yourself back and you start to say 10 things that you can see right in front of you, coffee cup, mic,
Hmm.
desk,
Hmm.
when you can start to say those things, you actually bring your attention back into the moment and you're like, oh, I am safe. I am safe.
Absolutely.
So I think presence is really important if you are someone that, struggles with anxiety.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you said, coffee cup, but then there's breath work that you can learn to do. There's, the pressure points on your body that you can
Mhm.
start to kind of press into. There's so many resources out there. There's so many different methods that work, and sometimes you need variety of a load of those things if it becomes too familiar, because
Mhm.
your body starts to go, no, I know what you're trying to do. I'm still going to go down this road, and so there's a lot of stuff out there that kind of helps in that way. And then having a panic attack is that immediacy, isn't it? It's like my life is in danger right now. And again, you need to get back to that looking around you, trying to figure out where you're at, being in the moment, but then also, going back to that subconscious programming and saying to yourself, well, actually, my life's not in danger.
Mm.
Um, how can we let that truth sit well within us in those moments as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah, absolutely. And to take it one step further, really what you want to do is identify the root cause of
Mm,
the frequency of the anxiety and the panic attacks because presence and breath work and things like that are very much in the moment tools to use.
in the moment. Yep.
Yeah, but there is a reason that people stay in anxiety. And it's something
Mm,
that you might not even realize, something that happened when you were 3 years old. And when your
yes.
environment acts as a stimulus to trigger you back into that, then you're thrown into that and you're like, I don't understand why I'm going through this because it's so deeply
Mm,
embedded in the unconscious. So I
mm,
think, if anyone is struggling with that, definitely like therapy or seeing someone, I would personally recommend energy psychology because that works with the mind and the body. So it really works at the nervous system level instead of just like talking about it.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's really identifying the root cause.
Yeah, and I've explored some of like EFT techniques as well to kind of tap into some of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Which, look, I'll be really honest. As you know, it's going courage, right? So I'm always honest. But there's some things that I think are crazy. In fact, I'm going to ask you some questions that I don't quite understand what
Yeah.
you're about, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you can walk into things with truth and you can experience things and see things for yourself, I think we'd be mind blown at what's out there. So for me, like even seeing someone struggle, they've been through therapy, they've done, CBT, they've done all sorts of stuff, and then to see them have a spiritual experience where something's come up from when they were 13 years old, let's say, and really be able to just tackle that and release that from their body and then be completely healed of things is
Mm.
like stuff that I've seen with my own eyes. And I'm like, I can't knock that. Like, that's not secondhand information. That's happening right in front of me.
Mm.
And experiencing some of those things has been, life changing. And I think as someone who has a faith and is, a believer that we are not in just a material world, I think, I don't even think our brains can comprehend, small percentages of the power that's out there that we can all tap into.
Mm. Oh my God, you just touched on so many things then. And I'm like,
Yeah, I
this is
did.
so exciting. But yeah, emotional freedom technique was actually my first certification. So
Okay.
that's my first energy psychology modality that I certified in. And as you were saying, like in that training changed my life because
Mm,
I remember seeing the trainer demonstrate on 5 people how quickly emotional freedom technique works because it taps it. It's like, like acupuncture and it's working
mhm,
with the meridians and things like that. Like that's what EFT is. It's acupressure. So it's actually
mm,
working with the same meridians and unblocking that energy at such a nervous system, like visceral level. And so He had 5 people lined up, and each person was coming up, and he would do this process. And literally every person was with him for like 30 seconds. And their life changed in that time. It was unbelievable. It was one person.
Yeah.
Then they broke down and they identified this root cause thing. And then they went around the back and worked with another therapist to actually like fully complete the process. And next one, next one, next one. Then when he got to the 5th one, he was like, damn, I'm scared because it was just so rapid and people were being cracked open. I'll never forget that because I remember seeing that being
Mm,
like, even just watching it is evidence that this works. And I think sometimes when we have
mm,
that evidence, it gives confirmation that it's available for us too. And we don't have to stay
mm.
in that pain or that anxiety. Like we actually get to shift it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when people see that, maybe not the experience of it being released, but even see, oh, here's, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a name, Bob. Here's Bob. And
It's
and
always
Bob's been
Bob.
like this. It's always Bob, isn't it, in the UK? I'm trying to think of an Australian name. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Bruce.
Bruce is Bruce. And Bruce has always been a certain way. And no, I'm not going to go there. But but now Bruce is completely transformed, and it's happened quite rapidly. What's going on in Bruce's life before it gets all negative and like, oh, he must be taking something he's not supposed to be taking, and all the rest of it. But there, people do see transformation. Like sometimes they don't even have to hear your story, but they see it, they recognize it in people. You know, when you live in authenticity, people are like, there's something different about this person.
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it. They might want to take you down. That's their issue, you know, their projection. But they do notice when you've done work, when you're living in a way that is, you know, aligned with who you are.
Yeah. And I think
Mm.
people so often forget that like energy speaks louder than words.
Mhm.
Right. And so that's why people can really recognize it because they don't realize that their energy is actually feeling that other person's energy. Like there is a resonance there from
Mhm.
like, if you think
Mhm.
about like the fabric, you know, the material that creates this reality is energy. Like this
Mhm.
reality is governed by the law of vibration. If you kind of, we can go into like the quantum physics of it, but
I was
like,
literally about to say quantum physics have shown that there are energy fields that are around us, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So when you understand quantum physics, you understand that energy communicates with energy, right? So even right now, like you might be saying something with your words, but I'll be able to feel your energy, and that's actually the truth.
Mhm.
And without, even when people are unconscious of that, people know it. And what I've come to realize is that authenticity, when you can feel someone's in their authentic nature and essence, it is magnetizing. Like people just want
Mm.
to be around people that are authentic, even if they don't agree with their beliefs or what they're doing or what they're saying. When you feel that someone's just owning themselves and just being authentic, there is something
Yeah,
so magnetizing and attracting about that.
yeah, totally. You find people who are like, "Oh, how come this person got away with it?" You know, I was trying to hide it, I was trying to lie about it, or whatever, and this person just came up and said, "Yeah, I did that. I'm really sorry. I'm not going to do that again." And you just go, because they owned it. It's like
Yes.
they're being authentic, you know.
Oh my God.
Um,
I find that ownership is one of the most attractive qualities in a human. Like,
mm,
we're
I
all going to
agree.
make mistakes. We're all going to say and do things that maybe aren't in alignment with our highest good or the highest good of someone else. That's just human nature because we learn through failure and making mistakes. But when someone owns it and they're not deflecting it, there's a maturity in that. And I find that
Mm,
so attractive because I'm
mm,
someone really across everything I do is showing people the truth.
mhm,
And there are just so many layers I could speak into about this, and we can go into that if you want to. But so many people are so afraid of seeing and meeting the truth of reality that they get caught up in their emotions or they get caught up in their projections and they deflect and they blame and all of this. And it's like when you just look at reality as it is without making it mean something about you, without making it mean something about someone else, when you just look at it for what it is, take all emotion out of it and just be very
mhm,
logical about this. That's
mhm,
reality. That's the truth. And when you are
mm.
met with truth, you can do something with it. There is so much power
Yeah,
in the frequency of truth. Um, and I'm not sure if you're aware of the gene keys. Have you heard of the gene keys?
I've heard the expression.
Yeah. So the gene keys for anyone listening, oh my goodness, like for anyone listening after this podcast, you have to go online and type in Gene Keys profile. It's one of the most in-depth body of works that I've come across. It's essentially like a profiling system. So it takes elements from other profiling systems like astrology and things like that. And it basically like shows you what your energetic blueprint is. It shows you your life purpose. It shows you your relationship style and the challenges you're going to face, the gifts you're here to actualize. And like any profiling system, it's really an experiment. It's there to be used as a reference point. It's not there to dictate your life and what you do, but it does
Mhm.
give you more information which you can choose to do something with. And in my gene keys, it says that my life's gift is to dismantle all misrepresentations of the truth among humanity. And when I came across that, I was like, that just
That's a
makes
big
so much.
deal, by the way.
Yeah, it's a big task. It's a big task. But it actually just makes complete sense. It makes complete sense with the way that I work, with the way that I see the world, with certain challenges I've encountered in relationships. It really
Mhm.
all does come back to the fact that I dismantle a lot of illusion. And again, coming
Right.
back to the uncaged theme, you know, our cages are illusions. They're not the truth of who we are. They are
Mhm.
cages that we've chosen to take on in order to belong in the world. So when we can see that as an illusion and we get to obliterate that illusion, we then come back to the truth of who we are, and the truth sets you free. So
Mhm.
a lot of what I do and everything I do really is to do with the truth. And that has come with a lot of challenges, and it's come with a lot of, you know, beauty and all of the things. So I've really experienced, you know, multiple perspectives of that one thing, but that's really at the core of everything I do is truth.
Interesting. There's a prophet nature to that as well, isn't there?
Mm, mm,
In terms of like truth and I
mm,
mean, it's scripturally said as well, the truth will set you free,
mm.
because lies keep you caged. I'm using
Yeah.
your words there with cages, but the lies, they're like shackles on your ankles, aren't they?
Mhm,
They keep you grounded to things that you don't want to be grounded to.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. And the hardest thing is to be honest with ourselves.
Mm.
Like one thing that I'm so passionate about, and I'm actually creating a body of work around this at the moment, is so many people unknowingly are chasing someone else's version of success and
Yeah.
chasing either society's version of success, or maybe it's the voice of their mum or the voice of their dad or the voice of their peers or the voice of their sibling or the voice of their enemy or whatever it is that's driving them to
Mm.
make certain decisions in their life and career. And you're never going to feel truly fulfilled if you stay in that illusion. So one
Mm.
thing that I do in my, you know, consulting, in my psychic consulting, that's the power of psychic reading, is I can see what's going on behind the curtain. I
Mhm.
know what you're actually here to do. I know the next step, which is in alignment with your highest good. And it might contradict what society says you need to do or you should do. Or it might
Mhm.
contradict what your mum wants you to do. It might contradict certain expectations, but really it comes down to, who are you living for? Are you living
Mm.
for other people? Are you living for society? Or are you here to create a new society? Are you here to
Mm.
create a new paradigm of doing something? Because that's what I believe evolution is almost feeling like a bit of an outsider and doing something different. And that breeds evolution.
Mm.
Doing something different. But so many people are so afraid to do something different and to go against the grain because of the judgment that might come from their loved ones or from
Mm.
society in general, that they stay in a reality that is not truly fulfilling for them. And it might be for
Mhm.
someone else, but maybe it's not for you. So when people get
Mm.
to see the truth and they can meet, like, and be really, really honest with, what do I want for my life? And
Mhm.
everything I'm living in, my beliefs, my expectations, what I think I should create for my life, is this true for me? Or am I
Mhm.
doing this for someone else's approval? And so when you can actually be really honest with that, you're on the path to fulfillment, genuine heart led fulfillment. So yeah, I'm creating like a whole system around that at the moment.
That's amazing. Where can people find that when it's available?
It's not released yet. So I would say just keep up to date on my Instagram at Emma Zia, and it'll be released soon.
Brilliant. I'll definitely chuck in links and descriptions
Mm,
and things like that for you as well.
mm, mm.
Okay. You talk about being a psychic. This is not my world at all. Okay. So what's common misunderstandings that people have around that topic?
Such a good question. A lot. I would say the first misconception that comes to mind is that people think that, I call it a skill. I think that being psychic is a skill. And I think a lot of people believe that it's only for a select few people, whereas I
Mhm.
see everyone as psychic. Everyone has the skill to be psychic. It's
Mm.
just that some people, like myself, are born into the world with some of our filters blown. So we're able to perceive the intangible reality maybe more easily than other people, but it doesn't mean that other people can't as well. And I think this is the thing is when people question if there is a reality that exists outside the material world, I ask them, do you have thoughts? They say yes. I say, do you have emotions? They say yes. I say, do you have ideas? They say yes. And I say, okay, well, when was the last time you held those things in your hand?
Mm.
Well, never. Exactly. Exactly. For you to deny an intangible reality is also for you to deny your emotions, your thoughts, your ideas, your dreams, your visions, right? These are all happening. That is all real for us. And we know it's real
Mhm.
because we can sense it. We just can't see it. And the reason
Mhm.
we can't see it is because, as I mentioned before, this reality is governed under the law of vibration, meaning that, if you are into quantum physics, it's like the wave particle theory, where this reality is really waves of energy. And it's through the observer of what they choose to see, which then collapses that wave timeline into a particle, and that becomes physical reality. So essentially, just to kind of simplify it a little bit, um, certain like electrons and atoms will vibrate at a much higher frequency. And these are the things that we can't feel, but we know they exist because we can sense them, going back to like the ideas, the thoughts, the emotions.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason for, and then there are atoms and electrons that vibrate at a slower frequency, which then becomes our tangible reality. That's our physical reality. So the human eye can only comprehend a certain frequency. So this is
Mhm.
why we can't see thoughts, ideas, and emotions, but we know that they exist because there is a sense of them. And that's just
Mhm.
because the human eye cannot interpret beyond a certain frequency. So that's kind of what I use to really like show people how the intangible reality does exist in a way that is very understandable for each and every person, no matter your beliefs or experience or
Mhm.
whatever. You can identify with having thoughts and emotions. You're not just a physical being. You're not just a physical body, because you also experience things outside of that realm.
Mm.
So I would say that the first misconception is that people believe that they're not psychic. You absolutely are psychic, and it's something that can be learnt, and it's something that also gets to be inherent as well. So it's just your choice.
Mhm.
Um, and then the second thing is that I think people glamorize psychic as if it's something other than just simply information that's beyond the physical. That's how I
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
So another misconception I would say is a lot of people confuse psychic with mediumship. So psychic is being able to tap into the realm of the psyche. That's being able to tap into information beyond the physical, as I just said. Mediumship specifically is to be a channel for deceased loved ones or those who have parted physically. So to be a medium, you essentially need to be able to raise your vibration to a level where you can match the vibration of someone who's passed into the spirit world, and therefore you can be a channel for them. Now, I am both. So I do mediumship and I do psychic, but to be honest, I'm choosing not to do the medium thing. So if
Mhm.
I'm in a psychic consult with someone, sometimes their loved ones come through, but it's not something I choose to advertise, and it's not something I choose to um, like continue strengthening and developing. However, I'm also open that if that is going to develop as part of my purpose here, then I'm open to that. But I think that there's a part of me that resists it, to be honest with you. And I had a session with my psychic the other day from the UK. I've been working with her for about 15 years. And I asked her the question, and I was just like, because she said to me when I was 15, she said, Emma, you could be doing what I'm doing. She said, you've got that skill, you've got that ability. And I said, I know, but I don't want to do it in the same way that you're doing it. And that was that I don't want to, channel parted loved ones in the way that she does. And I asked her the other day, and I was like, I'm getting this feeling that that is going to be something that's going to be strengthened in me, because I can feel it at the edge of my vortex, that there's a lot of like people wanting to come through. And she was just like, well, what do you choose to do? And I was like, I choose not to at the moment. So I think that we can choose to strengthen and lessen these skills as well.
Mhm.
And I would say probably just the last thing I want to say on this the misconception is that I think people see the psychic skill or psychic ability as something that's illogical. And
Hmm.
I see it as one of the most logical things that we can experience as humans. I was even saying to someone the other day that for me, spirituality is a very logical process. So
Hmm.
I see life through the lens of logic. I don't see life through the lens of emotion. I'm one of the most logical, analytical people you'll meet in your life. And I'm
That's so
also
interesting. Like it's but
exactly.
like again, not knowing about this stuff, right?
Mm.
And I don't come with any judgment. Like when you're talking about mediumship and things like that, I'm going, whoa, that's like step too far, you know.
Yeah.
But then hearing that actually you're coming from it from a logical perspective, that's really interesting because the misconception is, oh yeah, there's a few cards lying about, there's a bit of tarot going on, and a bit of astrology and whatnot, but and there's a lot of emotions involved, you're feeling stuff, but you're coming at it from a very sort of logical perspective, which is really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I was saying to someone the other day, that I think logic is one of the highest spiritual gifts because logic takes emotion out of it, which means you can see reality for what it is. You can see the facts of what is happening without clouding it by your perception of it. And in order to be a psychic, in my opinion, you need to be very objective. In order to actually tune into your intuition, into this the skill of being psychic, you need to not project your personal opinion, emotion, or perception onto what is happening. So because I'm so objective and so logical with life, I'm actually a really clean channel for people because I'm not filtering the information that's coming through based off of my personal opinion of something, because I get to remove myself from that. So I think logic is very connected with reality and logic is very connected with the truth. Now, the way that I do psychic readings is not through tarot cards, not through crystals. I don't use any of that, right? Because I almost refer to myself as the mystic mind, because I interpret this information from beyond the five physical senses in a way that is so logical, practical, and strategic that it resonates very closely with leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, people that just want the clarity like straight away. They don't want any of what you might consider like the fluff, like the psychic tools. They just want the clarity. They want the information. They want to know what they can't see. So this is what I say with my Uncaged consulting is that I answer the question on the lips of every leader, which is what can't I see? Because we're all walking around in such an individual reality. It's like being a fish in water. A fish doesn't know it's in water because it's just fully immersed in it. It's ambiguous. So when you can speak to someone who is completely objective, completely outside what you're going through in your life, but who's also tuning into the truth of everything that's happening behind the scenes of your life, you then get the clarity, you then get the answers, you then get to see what is the next best move that I can make to excel my life or my career or my relationships that I can't currently see right now. But someone like Emma, who's a psychic, she can see the next best step. Why would I not utilize that skill? And the way that I filter it, as I said, is all through logic. I make things to me, it's more logical sense to use that information to excel your experience in this lifetime. To me, that's more logical. So I don't necessarily speak in terms of like angels and spirit guides and stuff like that. I just speak into information. I think that the way I see life is through patterns. So I see life through patterns and numbers and things like that, not so much archetypal perspectives like spirit guides and stuff.
All right. Okay. And one of my questions was going to be, how did you find yourself in that world with entrepreneurs and CEOs and things like that? But that kind of answers that kind of that's a quite a natural fit for you then.
Well, it's so funny you asked this question. I was reflecting on this yesterday because it was such an interesting experience. When I first moved to Melbourne, I found, and this is actually for anyone that might be feeling like lost with their purpose in life, not knowing what to do with their skills and things like that. The way that I see it is that what we've come here to do is going to be something that feels so natural for us that we can't see it. It's going
Hmm.
to feel so natural and effortless that we're going to look outside of ourselves to try and find the answer. What am I here to
Mm.
do? What gifts am I here to, what skills am I here to develop? It's already there. and it's probably right in front of your face that you can't even see it. So this was my experience with the psychic skill, because I've obviously been psychic my entire life. But what happened was to kind of like integrate that into my profession is when I first moved to Melbourne, I kept being met with people that I would give business consultant advice to. And we're talking all industries, photographers, talent managers, product-based business owners, like so many different industries. And I would sit there not knowing anything about their industry and download exactly what they needed to do in order to actualize the next level of success. And I was sitting down with a photographer. So he was running a photography and videography business. And I was sitting down with him one day, and this is when it really clicked. I was channeling exactly what he needed to do. And you can tell, this is one of my favorite things about doing psychic reads on people, is when the truth resonates, the whole body shifts, the whole being shifts, because they're like, they're suddenly met with truth. And there's like a big relief about that and excitement, which is amazing. And I recognized this moment in this guy that I was speaking to. And I asked myself the question, how do I know all this information? Even though I don't have any experience running a photography and videography business, how do I know exactly what he needs to do, when and how? And I came to realize that intuition, the psychic skill, is not industry specific. It goes wherever it is required. So it becomes specialized in whatever industry I'm there to read for. So I can speak to anyone across any industry, any experience, like they could be a beginner or they could be seasoned in that world. And I know exactly what they need to do without having any pre-experience in that field. And this is the difference between just a standard consultant, which gives you like a cookie cutter, right? This is what works in the past. This is what's going to work for you. And then someone who is a psychic consultant that can be like, this is what you need to do for your unique path in your unique situation. This is the strategy for you. And that's where the power lies in being a psychic consultant. So that was really what made me realize how powerful this tool was. But then when I actually started monetizing it, it was when I was actually going out quite a lot, because Melbourne was pretty like wild back in the day. So I was going out a lot, having a few drinks, and I noticed that I kept being met with people in these bars and in these clubs that needed to receive a message. So I would sit there with them, and these were strangers, sit there with them and download and read for them. And I had like, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, like big men, like at the bar, like crying their eyes out because someone has actually just seen them for the very first time in their life. And the relief and the freedom that comes with that is unexplainable. And then that's when it clicked for me. And I was like, maybe I should actually just start monetizing this. So that's when I decided to start doing psychic readings. But even then, and I want to say this because it ties into what I just said about, what you're here to do is actually right in front of you and you can't see it.
Yeah.
So I was doing psychic readings. It was going really, really well, took off like wildfire. And I still felt like there was something different. And I remember my brother was at my apartment at the time, and I was going, bro, I don't know what I'm here to do. Like, I don't know, like, am I here to do this? Am I here to do this? And he looked at me and he went, Emma, you're already doing it. What you're here to do, you are already doing it. And I went, no, I'm not. It's something different. I just don't know what it is. I can't find it. I went into my room for about 30 minutes. I let the stubbornness just like dissipate and dissolve. And then I came back out and I was like, bro, you're right. It's just right in front of me that I cannot see it. And because it's so natural and effortless, it's the easiest thing for me to do is to read people psychically. And because it's so easy, I couldn't see it because I feel like whatever I'm here to do must be more complicated. It must be more challenging. There must be
I have
something.
to earn it.
Yes. There must be something that I have to earn or learn, or it can't be just something that comes so naturally for me. And that conversation I'll never forget, because when he reflected that back to me, although I was stubborn at first, once I released the stubbornness, I was like, you're so right. I went back into my room and I just completely restructured how I do psychic readings. And I created a system that no other psychic I know has created. And it was very strategic. There was a spreadsheet and I compartmentalized it. And so I would do everything on the spreadsheet and then I would download the spreadsheet after and then send that to the client as a reference point So it was really integrating the strategy meets the psychic skill and the psychic information.
Mm.
And that was really what catalyzed me into monetizing it.
Amazing. That's what I'm going to call this podcast, the psychic with a spreadsheet. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Oh, wow. I think, in all of that, in all of what you're saying there's such a, we're talking about truth that in its essence, right? In if you strip everything away, we're talking about people meeting truth and understanding truth and what that has, in store for them if they've never really looked for that, or people who have had experiences around that and then are still seeking for stuff that's, like you said, right in front of them, but they're not seeing it because they're chasing a lie, so to speak. um you know it's incredible. It's incredible to be able to just open people's eyes in that way, and then the euphoria, using that word again, you feel in being part of that journey for them, because it's not even like you can take, like, I've seen some mad prophecies being spoken over people by people who don't even know the person, and it's bang on, it's like on point completely. But it's not the person. You don't go, oh, Bruce came with the prophecy, and Bruce must have this, amazing. It's kind of like, no, the truth came, and it used that vessel. It used someone who's open to be courageous enough to receive, but also be courageous enough to step out of their comfort zone and give at the risk of being ridiculed, rejected, all of those things.
Mm,
Um, but the reward is so good, and that's what
mm,
I think, drives us. Well, those of us who have that high levels of empathy and want to, bless someone, want to give to someone's life in order for their life to hopefully, be
mm,
what's the word, transformed, essentially, like that's what you want. But
mm.
even just you contribute to a little cog in that little journey that they're going on, it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, exactly. And what I always say to people is I'm just a conduit of consciousness and a conduit of information. And one of the big lessons for me is because I hold that frequency where I will mirror back to you your truth, and that can
Mm,
be very challenging and confronting. And it can also be
mm,
very freeing. And I've noticed how people respond very differently to the fact that I am the mirror of truth to them. Sometimes people absolutely hate me. Like
mm,
sometimes people just get so triggered by my presence because my very existence is going to challenge a lot of people.
mm.
And the big
I'm
lesson.
safe because, like, I'm miles away and I've got a camera in front of me, so I'm not too triggered by your presence. But
Yeah, so you might leave the podcast and be like, "Oh, no." But what it is that because I reflect people back to people what they're ready to see for their own integration and healing, sometimes when people aren't
mm,
ready for that and their ego kicks in, they just
sure.
like start reacting to me. I've had so many relationships where out of nowhere people will just like lay into me.
Mm,
And so what I've had to really like differentiate is not to take it personal. It's the
mm,
message that I'm communicating to them that is very challenging and confronting for them. It's not
sure.
necessarily about me and my presence. It's about what I'm representing for them. It's about
Mhm,
being that
mhm.
vessel of truth. And
Yeah.
so this is, and I even had one of my friends who actually reads the gene keys, going back to what I said earlier. She said to me, she was like, Emma, people will either love you or hate you. And I was like, yes, I've noticed that I have such depth and love and intimacy with so many people. Like the depth of my relationships is a depth that I've noticed not a lot of people can go to. And it's because we have the
Mhm.
courage to keep leaning in. And I
Yep.
set the container for my relationship, whether friends or partner or family. I set the container with certain standards, which means we're not going to run
Mm,
away at discomfort. We're not going to run away with challenge. We're going to utilize that for both of us to grow.
yeah.
So I create so much depth. And then also on the flip side, I have people that just do not understand me. They don't get me. They are challenged by me. They are triggered by my existence and all of those things. And so for me, it's really just always returning to a place of neutrality and being able to discern what's really going on so that I don't
Mm,
get caught up in it in my own, projections and make it mean something personal. And sometimes there is that thing of, okay, well, what is this teaching me about myself? How have I created this
mm.
experience?
Yes.
So I'm not, that's definitely a part of it. But speaking into the other aspect is just to know that um, people really are afraid to see the truth in themselves. And when someone is
Yeah.
reflecting that back to you, it can, be very challenging. So yeah, that's my life.
No, I can relate to some of that, especially when if you are someone who, values deep connection, and you get to a certain age where, you think to yourself, well, I want to spend my time with connections that I value, and those are deeper connections. So the surface level ones are a little bit like, hey, I can connect with you, but what I'm looking for is, authentic connection, meaningful connection, and it doesn't have to be long connection. It could even just be a moment. Like it's not quantified by length, but you know, I, I think when you have, I'm trying not to sound judgmental. When you have people who maybe find that level difficult within themselves, then yeah, it can be a very triggering experience, um, because you're coming in without judgment and just saying, "Hey, did you ever think about that? Maybe this thing is the thing that's holding you back." And it's like, "Oh, how dare you?" Da, 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 da. And I think if you come from a place of people pleasing, or if there's anxiety that you're pushing through, that can really have an effect on you. And I think you touched on that as well. It teaches you about yourself as well. It teaches you about who you are, and what things you need to become uncaged, in what aspects of those things that have been highlighted within yourself that you could move forward through as well. So
Mm.
in all of it, it's a learning process. It's a growth process that you can choose to walk through, or kick the ball down the field and deal with it another time, which that time may never come. And I think that's the thing that scares me. Like, the more you throw things down the field, um, I'm like, well, that we only have what we have in front of us. Like, we can't predict how long we're here or what happens and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the way that I see it is that if you think about it, everything in this reality is based off of relationship.
Hmm.
Our relationship to others, our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to our careers, our relationship to money, our relationship to sexuality, our relationship to objects, materialism. Everything is really about relationship.
Hmm.
And the way that I see it is it's divinely orchestrated that way in order for evolution to take place. Because we need other people or other things outside of ourselves to reflect something back to us in order for us to see it. So, this
Hmm.
is why we each believe that we're living such an individual life. Because the way that I see it is we actually, if you look at the fabric of this universe, we actually come from unity consciousness. There is this oneness. We are actually, sorry, we're actually all connected through this oneness frequency. I mean, if you look at the
Hmm.
fact that we're all humans, we're all made up of the same DNA, like that in and of itself means that we're all related to
Hmm.
some extent. So that's how I see it. But when we're born into this world, we're also born into perceived separation. We don't
Hmm.
see how we're all connected. We don't see how we're all one. We don't see unity consciousness, because if we did, we wouldn't be able to learn anything about ourselves. We wouldn't be able to understand ourselves. In order for us to understand ourselves, we need to see separation. We need to see polarization. We need to see ourselves from being outside of ourselves so that we can learn about ourselves, understand ourselves, and that is evolution. So I think that, yeah, I just wanted to kind of speak into that from a relationship perspective. And you touched
Sure.
on something about like a choice, like a choice to like throw it away or a choice to
Yeah.
lean in.
Free will.
And yeah, and that is really where we cultivate courage,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
We have a
That's it.
choice to lean in and discover what is available for us in that experience, or we have a choice to lean out and run away from it. If you
Mm.
run away from it, you're going to be running away for the rest of your life. If you're avoiding the
Mm.
tough conversations, if you're avoiding vulnerability, if you're avoiding intimacy, you're never going to create the connection that is actually going to, you know, flourish, like catalyze a lot for you in your own life. So I think really that's what it is courage is a choice. And I
Mm.
think courage really comes down to being how we relate to fear and choosing to welcome fear to walk with us, to come in the journey with us rather than to run away from it. And that's when we
Mm.
really experience so many of those growth moments.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And even just when you pull back, there's an element of, okay, I've pulled back now, I can't go forward. I loved your bow and arrow analogy. You can pull back in the fear, take that deep breath. I know a few times we've had to speak in front of a couple of hundred people for the first time, and I'm like, I'm here now, and I imagined it, and I visualized what was going to happen, and I've done all my sort of routine. I know where I'm going, and then I have that moment where I'm like, I can't do this, I can't do this. And then in that moment as well, there's that free will choice. Am I going to go for it, or I'm going to run the other way? And in most cases, going for it pays off. Like, it pays off in terms of that self integrity, that self value that you have afterwards, your identity coming to the surface, and things like that. And that's why I think, with social media, I don't want to get into a whole conversation about this, but with social media, magazines, even before social media, things like that, you're sold this perception of a false reality, and then you're told how to get to that false reality. Because at the end of that, getting on that boat in Dubai, or these Ferraris or whatever else, you're going to find the thing that you were searching for your whole life, and you're going to find completeness. And then linking to what you said before about the disconnect and the what did you call it? Consciousness, unity consciousness, I think you called it.
Yes.
Is that right? It reminds me of the whole, whether people believe it or not, but just even if you take it as mythology or truth, whatever, but if you look at that whole Garden of Eden story, where okay, there's a lot of details, but essentially you're in the presence of this divine being, and then you go into this twisted dark side, and all of a sudden you're disconnected based on a lie. Eat the apple, it's going to give you everything you always ever wanted, it's going to give you the Ferrari or whatever. I don't know why Ferraris are coming up today. Not even my favorite car, but whatever. You now, by doing this, there is an element of disconnection from this divine sacred being, and then you're forever condemned into disconnection, looking for connection. And the only way you can find that connection is to find your way back to that divine being, so that you can feel the presence of that divine truth. Otherwise, you're looking for that divine truth in just falsehood everywhere, and you're never satisfied. And I think that, I don't know if people's ego, my ego, would appreciate that, but you live in this perpetual state of fear, because when you get down to the root, it is the fear of, like you said, evolutionary, the fear of dying, the fear of not being enough, the fear of not being loved, the fear of not being in community or accepted, etc., etc. So there's such a range of analogies and stories and truth out there that are effectively saying the same thing. Find yourself by connecting to that source.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on such a good point there, because I always say it's not so much the thing that matters, it's more so the energy behind it, the intention behind it.
The intent,
So
yeah.
I think that, we're in this material world to experience material things. And I
Mm,
think
mm,
it's great to drive 10 Ferraris and have the house and all those things. And, I know from my experience, like I love cars, right? I love
mhm.
luxury cars. So
White
that's a big,
white Mercedes, maybe. I'm
I've
sensing.
got,
No, I
that's
saw
my
your
current
Instagram. I
car.
saw your Instagram. Yeah, yeah.
But I definitely can't wait to keep buying cars and go on the boats and the travel and things like that, because like luxury is actually
Yeah.
something that's really uniquely authentic for me. But it might not be for other people, and that's okay, but it is for me.
Mm,
And I think that and I think the reason that this is so good is because I think I denied that part of myself for so long, because it wasn't seen as
mhm,
like spiritual to
mhm,
really.
mhm,
So a big thing for me has been to really like build such a beautiful relationship with materialism, and
mhm,
really like allow myself to want to drive the cars and get nice things and make the money and all of that. So that's been like a really big journey for me, is building that
mhm.
relationship, because I
And there's
think
nothing wrong. Sorry, just jumping in real quick. There's nothing wrong with enjoying that. It's
mm,
it's 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 if you draw your source of identity from it, then you know that it's not going to be fulfilling, right? But it's not to say that you go, okay, that's it. I'm never going to look at anything shiny because it's going to take away from my sacredness or whatever.
exactly, and that's where it comes down to. It's the energy behind it. It's asking yourself, why do I want this?
Mm.
right? Because when you ask yourself, why do I want this? Where is this desire actually coming from? You get to discern, is it from, because the way that I compartmentalize desire because I'm very logical about these things. So I compartmentalize it into two main camps. There's the desire from lack, and then there's the desire of potential. The desire from lack is where our ego is like, I don't feel good enough. I need that Ferrari to feel good enough. Because when I have that thing,
Mm.
I'm going to feel like I've made it. Right. And then you get the Ferrari and then you drive it, and then you're like, huh, why do I feel empty inside? Why do I
Because
still
I
feel,
didn't buy a Lamborghini. That's why. That's what
yeah?
you really wanted.
So then you buy the Lambo and then it's all fine. No, but do you see what I mean? So and
Mm.
and that's what blows my mind is it's like, of course you're not going to feel fulfilled if it's coming from lack. Like this should be obvious, right? But this is a journey that so many people go through. Whereas if you're asking yourself the question, then sorry, going back to desires, then there's the desire of potential, which is when we get those seeds, it's kind of like these seeds of desire into our vortex, and we're like, I really want to actualize this. I really want to go for this. I really want to create this. And it's because your potential is giving you clues, right? Your potential is
Mm.
giving you invitations. This is what's available to you. I'm going to seed this into your consciousness so you can go get it, so you can go look for it, so you can go create it.
Mm.
That is from potential. So a great way that I like to kind of teach people to help discern is this coming from lack or is this coming from
Mm.
potential? Because it's not
Mm.
the thing itself, it's not the Ferrari which is the issue, it's the place of what's driving you to want that. So I think
Mm.
that's a really good practice for people to really embody, moving forward, any of the listeners to really help discern. Um, and it's the same with fear. I feel like we've spoken about fear a lot. So I just want to bring that in for a second as well, is there is the fear from lack, and then there is the fear of potential. And so
Mm.
again, like the fear from lack is really, something that can drive us to make certain decisions or go for things in life because we feel we're trying to run away from that deep-seated feeling of inadequacy or that
Mm.
deep-seated fear of aloneness or that deep-seated fear of being unlovable. So we're trying to run away from it and create this kind of tension to keep going for something else. But what happens with an elastic band or a bow and arrow when you have that tension? It just
Mm.
collapses. You're always going to feel like you
Mm.
go back to square one. You're going to feel like you're going backwards because you're trying to
Mm.
run away from something, and the universe is going to be like, look at this fear, look
Yeah,
at the
you
fear.
haven't learned this lesson yet.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But
Mm.
then there's the fear of potential, which is that bow and arrow analogy of like it's actually showing you where you're going. It's showing
Mhm.
you, Emma, you are here to use your words to transform humanity. So
Mhm.
you're going to feel fear about getting on those stages. You're going to feel fear about launching the podcast. You're going to feel fear
Yep.
about writing the book. But that's where
Mm.
you're going. That's where your potential lies. So let's go for it. So that's kind of how I define fears and desires into those two camps, lack and
Mm.
potential.
I love it. I love it. And even I'm just taking it personally. Even going courage. Branding, going courage, understanding what I wanted to say or what I wanted to do in terms of talking to people with real life experiences, etc. Um, you know, I was going to go down the anxiety route because that was where I started from, and it was about overcoming anxiety. But then when I really stripped it down, anxiety comes from fear, right? And if we're talking about tackling it, the potential is courage. Courage is the thing that brings you through fear. Not to diminish fear or to say fear shouldn't exist, but it's like actually courage is the vehicle that you want to use to
Mhm.
to push through. So yeah, I really love the way you phrase that. And I keep seeing spreadsheets now. Here's your spreadsheet for potential. Here's the spreadsheet for lack.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I love how you've done that because you've really flipped it to more of like the solution frequency rather than the problem frequency.
Mhm.
So we have to be careful sometimes what we speak about. And it's like, am I perpetuating something that could actually, keep someone in that energy of like anxiety
Yeah.
or am I actually going to choose to exist on the other side of that, which is the solution frequency? Courage
Mm.
is the antidote to, overcoming the anxiety and things like that.
Absolutely, and words matter. So when I talk to people, in one of the things that I do, I coach people through stuff, and some of it is anxiety. And when they say my anxiety, I'm like, whoa, what do you mean your anxiety? Hold on a second, don't own that's not yours. Like
Yeah.
it's something you experience, right? But it's not a part of who you are. So I think once you start speaking in even just internally to yourself, with language that more aligns with the truth of what's going on, then you're not lying to yourself as well.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and you're constantly breaking out of that.
mm.
Yeah, I've had a great conversation with you. I could talk to you for hours. I
Don't
had a couple of
mess.
questions, but I think we've covered pretty much everything I really wanted to ask you. I
Mhm.
mean, I think there's a heck of a lot more depth we can go into. So I'd love to get you back again in the future if you'd be up for that.
Yeah, I'd love
Um,
that.
but before I say goodbye, I'd love for you to just let people know where they can find you, what you offer in terms of service. I'll put all of those links, of course, if you're listening to this on YouTube, that's all in the description.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you can catch us on the website as well, which is goencourage.com. But Emma, let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time on Instagram at Emma Zia, that's ZIA. So if anyone is listening and you really enjoyed the podcast and you found something resonating with you, then definitely pop into my DMs and let me know, what you got from the show. I love to hear people's reflections and to connect with you. You can also check out my website, emmazia.com, which just has links to everything. And then there's also Uncaged Consulting, which is my psychic consulting business. So you can actually go on there and we can do a session.
And is that its own website, or is that linked via emmazia.com?
No, it's its own website. Yeah, uncagedconsulting.co.
Brilliant. Okay, excellent. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of ways
Yeah,
to connect with you, which is great.
yeah,
Fantastic. You are the second podcaster that I've had on my podcast. So thank you for coming on. You know what it's like on this side of things and
yeah,
producing and things like that.
yeah,
So brilliant. And thank you for you know, jumping on all the way from Australia.
yeah.
You are in the future right now. I'm sitting in the past.
I love that. I see the future and I currently am the future.
You're sitting in the future. Yeah. And I love just going full circle. I love the meaning of your name as well. You know, wholeness, universe. We covered a lot of topics today. And I seriously would love to talk to you again. So let's make that happen as well.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you so much for coming on. And if you're listening to this, whatever you're doing, whatever you're struggling with or trying to move forward in potential, go forth and go in courage. Hey, really hope you enjoyed that episode with Emma Zia. I hope there was something in that has, given you something to think about, given you something to maybe move forward with. And as always, would love to hear what you thought or if there was something that really jumped out to you. So you can get in touch via Instagram, via the DM, or you can get in touch via the comment section on YouTube. But do reach out, always open to hearing how these stories, these conversations that I'm having with these really interesting people is having an impact on your thinking, your mindset, and hopefully even the experiences that you are going through in your life right now. I know I say this a lot, but if you haven't already, do hit that subscribe button. It makes a huge difference to this channel. And if you haven't already checked it out, we do have the Courage Journal available on Amazon for 31 days of building courage. If you'd like to know a little bit more, you can go on the website at www.goencourage.com for more information.